Welcome to my tutorial for no return mode on moderate. And this is for The Last of Us 2 Remastered. This is the roguelike mode, which is basically one life to beat 6 stages. So you basically beat 5 randomized stages, then the 6th stage is the boss of the run. So there's only one boss fight at the very end. And here you see I chose Ellie. Each character has different weapons, basically, that they'll come across. Like certain characters only have access to certain weapons, so keep that in mind. I actually was playing mostly as Abby, and as far as explosives go, I was limited to pipe bombs. I did have a flamethrower, which was nice for the boss of the run, since he is kind of weak to fire. This is for the arcade bloater boss. This is my first time completing the game. The first time you complete it, you fight the arcade bloater as the boss. But each time you complete a run, you unlock a new boss. So it probably does get harder in that sense as far as the final boss that you'll face. Now here you see me at the bulletin board. This is where you can map out your paths ahead of time. I didn't learn this until late, that I could actually kind of map out what type of events that I play and which stages I play them on. You can see because each time it's randomized, so you can see what the game has laid out for you ahead of time. You can even reset the game at that point and get a different layout. I think I might have done that once. But you can get different layout. Now for me, I'm going to explain more about the kind of levels that I choose. For me, capture is the main event that I want to choose. Whenever I see the capture event, that's the one I go for whenever I can. Now the reason for that is I find those the easiest to complete, the fastest to complete, and I get the most resources, because in capture, if you wipe everybody out and open the safe in time before the timer runs out, you get a bunch of fucking resources, which is really fucking nice. So I love those fucking events because I can end them real fast, because I don't even play very stealthy in those events. I may stealth a few guys, but you only got a small amount of time. So I might stealth 1 or 2 people, but then I go fucking wild and just murder everyone. And they're usually all together in a nice clump. And there might only be, depending on which, each event gets harder the farther you are into the run. So if you're playing capture and it's the 5th stage, the final stage of the run, it's going to be a lot harder than if it was the first stage. So keep that in mind. That applies to all the different, mode types. But for capture, even the latest capture ones, even if it's a capture on the 5th event, you might have to fight 7 or 8 guys, which is not the easiest thing to do, but you might be able to stealth a few of them. The problem is that sometimes, depending on the stage, you're going to be really closely clumped together. Like if it's in a house or something, it can be kind of tough. So you have to be good at playing aggressively and taking out a mob of enemies, on your feet, without stealthing everybody out. So that could be tough for players that are more accustomed to stealth gameplay. It may be a tougher mode. It depends on your playstyle, what you're gonna find that you like better. But for me, capture is the one to go for. Now there are these stupid visual filters that are applied as mods to some of the stages, which really doesn't add anything to the stage. It just kind of looks shitty. But there's mods that are applied to each stage. Sometimes you get no mods applied and you're just playing the stage normally. Other times there's going to be mods like raining Molotovs, or the worst one to get is invisible enemies. I try to avoid that one. So when you're looking at all the stages and mapping out your path, avoid the ones that say invisible enemies if you can, because those are going to be the hardest. You can identify the enemies by their shadow, and you can also use your little sensory mode where you can see through walls and shit. You can use that to see them. But it's really a pain in the ass, and it's hard to place good shots, So I really wouldn't advise doing it, especially if you get, infected invisible enemies. That means they're all going to be rushing at you. And if it's a clicker, the good thing about the infected is that they don't have many projectile attacks. There's a fat one that can throw acid at you, but it's very slow. But the thing with the infected enemies is that there is one that can one-hit kill you. With the human enemies, there's no human enemy that can one-hit kill you. But with the infected, if you get grabbed by a clicker, you can die in one hit unless you have a shiv to counter it. So you'll have to have a shiv crafted, and then you can press triangle to stab the clicker and get out of it. But depending on the stage, it's going to tell you if you're fighting against humans or infected. So most of the time I prefer infected. I prefer the humans, unless it's if it's a hunted map. Sometimes it's better to have clickers, because you can just run around in circles until the timer runs out, which I'm going to probably demonstrate in this run. Now there's also these dead drops, which You may have to craft the first aid kit or something in the beginning to be able to use it, but if you drop stuff off at the dead drops, you're going to get a random bonus item after you complete the event. So I like to do these whenever I can because a lot of times I'll get access to some of the long guns, like the flamethrower. If I'm playing as Abby, she'll get the flamethrower sometimes. If I'm playing as Ellie, I may get another rifle or shotgun or something like that, or maybe the Magnum. But you'll get access to you'll get different weapons that you may not find at the shop, which I'm going to show between rounds. So now for this first event, I was playing pretty sloppy because I knew I could get enough ammo back or whatever, and if I lost in health, I didn't really care. Because the early events are the easiest ones since you have the least enemies to deal with. So I was playing a little bit careful, but not super careful. But I'll get into how to map out your path and stuff like that a little later. Now, the reason I tried Ellie this time, after about 15 hours or so, I finally tried Ellie for a decent amount of runs. And I wanted to try her because she has Molotovs. She's one of the characters that has Molotov cocktails, which are, exploding bombs that light guys on fire and shit. The reason I wanted that was because the arcade bloater boss of this run is weak to fire. So I figured if I could get in there with 3 Molotovs, I could get a nice starting damage by using all 3 Molotovs right when the fight begins with the boss. But when I got there, I only had 1 Molotov, so I ended up having to just make do and swapping weapons and just taking pot shots at the boss until I wiped them out, take out the minions, etc., which I'll show. So I had to do it differently than planned, but I wanted to bring a bunch of Molotovs, which you can only hold 3, but I think that would have been a nice start. So you can try to do that. But with Abby, I really liked Abby the best because Abby gets health back when she melee attacks enemies. So it's a great way to keep your health up, which I really liked. But the problem with her, and she also does more damage with melee, it seems. So she kills guys faster by smacking them around. So I would go aggressive with melee when I played as Abby. If you look at my failed attempts where I almost beat it, I posted those up, and you'll see I go real aggressive with the melee. But she's missing some of the other perks that Ellie has and some of the other advantages because they all have different upgrade trees and stuff. So it is worth experimenting with the different characters to see which ones you like. You may find an opening with a character you didn't expect. Like when I played Ellie, that's when I ended up winning. So I don't know, if it was because she had Molotovs though, because I only got 1 Molotov for the boss. But I did have a nice selection of long guns and shit like that. I didn't have a flamethrower though. So Abby does get the flamethrower. So at the gun shop here, I'm always trying to pick up the long guns. If I see a long gun or even a Magnum, if I see any of those power weapons available, the only one I avoid is the crossbows or the bow and arrow with these characters because I'm not really looking for a stealth build. I want to go all out, mostly aggressive shit. I don't even craft silencers usually. I rarely use silencers or anything like that. I like to save my resources for more offensive shit. When I'm stealth killing people, I like to mainly just sneak up on them and strangle them from behind and shit like that. So I don't really, I may throw a brick at them or something to stun them. Now, of course, the general mechanics of the main game, you should be familiar with them, and you should have already beaten the main game before playing this. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of little nuanced things with the control and the way the game works that you're not going to be familiar with. So I'm not going to go into all that shit because you really should beat the main game before you do this. But I'll try to cover some of it. So now I'm mapping out my path and deciding what I want to do. The reason I picked the top path is because I want to do capture events. I also really don't like the hunted game type that you see below. So I'm less likely to do the hunted missions unless I have to beat a hunted mission to get to a capture mission or something like that, then I may do it. But I try to avoid the hunted missions because a lot of times I find them to be some of the riskiest missions that can end in death. Now, if I get a hunted mission with infected, if there's a decent amount, if it's not a super dark area, some stages are really fucking dark, and it can be really hard to run around for 2.5 minutes with the infected chasing you the whole time. It's hard to run circles, but it can be done. But some of the more open areas, if I can get hunted in an open area, with infected, then it can be pretty easy. I can pretty much just do laps around the map. And I may show that. I don't know if I had to do that this run. Good thing about Ellie is she can craft Molotovs. But now for this mission, this is another assault mission where you have to take out 3 waves of enemies. I ended up going really aggressive on this one with melee. I did do some stealthing though, but I believe the first wave I pretty much just beat the shit out of all of them. You know, just dodge and melee basically. Another good thing to turn on is the auto grab. I think it's in the accessibility menu or in the controls menu. If you turn on auto grab or whatever the fuck it's called, you will automatically pick up whatever you run past pretty much, instead of having to mash triangle all the time. So it's a great way to pick up some extra shit that you might miss. The only downside to that feature is that if you're trying to run away from enemies, it will slow you down because you're going to be grabbing every little fucking knick-knack, you know, while you're running away from enemies. So you got to get used to that. It could be detrimental if you're not ready for that. But I got used to it. So now we're on the second wave. I think I'm playing sneaky now because the first wave kind of spawned right on my ass. So I ended up taking them all out. Now, of course, you want to use listen mode a lot to see where the enemies are. It also gives you kind of a indication where they're going to spawn at. There's an icon that shows up on the HUD pretty much, and it'll give you an idea of where the enemies spawned at. Generally, the enemies are always going to spawn right around the area where you are. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to spawn kind of close to where you're at, and then they're going to come look for you in the area where you last were. So if you want to avoid them, you don't really want to stay in the area. Because you see, now they're all emerging on the area where I last was, right? Slowly, but they're getting there. So if you don't want them to all, you know, search you out, then you just want to move from the last location you were, and it'll throw them off. Of course, if you get spotted, that all goes out the window. But I like using a triangle to grab these enemies, and then I like headshotting the second enemy, and that's usually a double kill that I can get. I do that often to take out two people immediately. It's a great way to narrow down to wipe out half of the enemies right off the bat. Now, of course, it's harder to do sometimes when there's like 7 or 8 enemies in one area, but I have still done it. But it gets a lot more dangerous. Because some missions you're not going to have time to fuck around and sneak around. Like some of them are timed, and like the capture, you got to do it fast if you want to get the safe. You don't have to do it fast though if you don't care about the safe. But there are also timed assault missions that are pretty tough because you got to wipe everybody out pretty quick. So you can't really stealth around too much. So it does switch up the way you play. You always want to grab the heavy melee weapons like the spiked bats. The two-handed ones are the best, like the big pipe or the 2x4. Those will really wipe enemies out when you smack them. The smaller melee weapons are great though too. And Ellie, I believe, can craft, melee weapons. She might have to get an upgrade to do that, whereas Abby can do that right off the bat, I think. So yeah, now we're on the last wave. Of course, I like to reset my position usually. But I'm staying in the general area. The reason I'm not moving far away is because I want the enemies to look for me so I can start wiping them out. But, depending on what's going on, if there's like 8 enemies searching for me, then I may not stay in the same area, It just depends. But you can take your time, and usually enemies will creep around the corner, and then you can get the stealth kill. Because they're going to be looking around the area where you last were. So if you wait long enough, you'll get your opportunity. But like I said, I like grabbing him and then trying to headshot the other enemy. You want to get headshots, otherwise you're wasting like 3 bullets to take down one enemy a lot of times. So, I did waste some bullets, but I knew I'd get more ammo back and shit. I wasn't too concerned here, so that's why I'm not playing super well. So now there's only one enemy left. So a lot of times what I do is I'll shoot the enemy once and then run in and finish him off with a melee. But here I was kind of pinned down since I got knocked over, so I just unloaded my clip on the enemy and finished it. But another thing that helped me, strangely enough, I was playing with a $300 Scuff controller, which is a really nice controller, but I found that my aiming is a lot worse on that controller. It kind of mimics the PS5 controller the way it's laid out, and I find that I don't aim as well with that controller for whatever reason. So I tried my Razer V2 Pro controller. It's another PS5 controller, and that was another expensive one, but that controller has more of an Xbox 360 ergonomic to it. It's like a bigger shell. And I use that with, I had this like footrest, and I had this, it's supposed to be a seat pad, but I used it to rest my arms on, and I found it gave me really stable aim for whatever reason. So making that little change, I was able to get a lot more headshots and accurate shots, which was kind of odd, but just by making a little bit of a change, I found I was a lot more accurate. My accuracy was really bad with the scuff controller for whatever reason. I was missing shots all the time. This game does have an annoying feature where if you don't press the trigger all the way in, your shot won't fire off, which is kind of shitty. And that's a problem no matter what control I used. It seemed to be a problem. So you got to make sure you hit the trigger all the way. I had trigger stops on my Razor controller, which stops the trigger early. But even with that, sometimes it wouldn't register a shot, and I'd miss a shot. So if you see me aiming at someone and a bullet doesn't come out, that's probably what happened. Because I usually snap my shots off pretty fast. So I like to save money for things that I'm actually going to use in this little shop. So I'll buy the long guns. I'll buy things like pipe bombs or Molotovs, depending what character I'm using. And sometimes I'll even buy ammo. But ammo is usually the last thing I'll buy for my guns, because usually I want to buy an actual gun. But if that's not available, I might cash in on ammo. Sometimes I'll save the money though, just so I can use it for the next run, because it carries over to the next stage. Everything carries over. So sometimes I save my resources, and I want to save up for a long gun or something like that is what I'm looking for. You can use the dice option in the store to re-roll and get a different setup of items in the shop. You can only do it once per session, though. You have to wait until you beat another stage to reset it. So you don't always get what you want. As far as upgrades, I go for capacity and power upgrades on certain weapons. Anything else, I don't really find that useful. So I save. There's also supplements you can use to get different benefits. I go for the more offensive stuff. There's also things like Endure, which means that if you take a fatal hit, you can survive it. I always get that. I think Ellie has that available. Abby can get that available, but it's rare that she'll get it because she has to get it through a recipe, which if you do dead drops and things, you'll get recipes sometimes. Or you might get them between stages as your little bonus. Now, I believe depending if you get an S rank, an A rank, or whatever, it gives you more resources as well that you get in the crate between missions. So now this is a capture mission. So for this, I'm usually not waiting around too long because I don't have a lot of time to take all the enemies out. So you'll probably see me rushing the enemies. There's only 4 more left. I already got 2 of them. And they're all going to kind of mob into this one area where I can efficiently take them out, hopefully. Now, if you get shot with an arrow, be careful because you can bleed out, which happened to me multiple times before I realized that you got to hold down R1 to take the arrow out or you'll bleed out. So now I'm using listen mode to kind of group the enemies together around these corners and take out the ones that I can as they approach me. I think I might have been short on pistol ammo at this point, so I was using my long gun. I try to save the longer gun ammo and the more powerful weapons. I try to mainly use my pistol, but occasionally, I'm going to run out of ammo, so then I have to use melee and other shit. Now, I use melee a lot anyway, but of course, if enemies are at range, I need some kind of projectile, so I may resort to using a long gun if I'm out of pistol ammo. So here I just jump down and finish this guy off because the timer's getting really close, so able to finish this guy off now. I'm going to go to the safe. I think the safe was down here anyway, so it worked out. You want to use listen mode to see where the safe is at. That's usually where all the enemies are going to be huddled around. And by the safe, there's always usually a little container as well over here. See this container? These are the containers that you get between rounds of assault as well, between the waves. But there is one available on these capture missions as well, right by the safe. So grab all that shit. But I like capture because it's over pretty quick. And if you get the safe, you can get a lot of resources. So capture is the one that I always try to get if I can. So yeah, basically you want to pick upgrades and various items and things that are going to complement your playstyle, obviously. You don't want to waste shit just for the fuck of it. You know what I mean? Because it's better to save it and use it on something that you're going to use. Now, one thing I do with these runs is I try to get as many weapons as I can, minus the bow weapons. The bow weapons just don't put out a lot of damage unless you get the... I think there's an explosive arrow upgrade, but you may or may not get that, so I don't even bother with that. Maybe it's good to try to get that, but I just go for all the other weapons and shit because it gives you an opportunity to do a lot of extra damage. Because you're going to be swapping weapons like crazy with the boss fight. You know, to try to use all your various ammo and take the boss out. So I'm basically trying to prepare for that boss fight by getting as many weapons as I can. So, you know, that's my general strat with getting weapons and shit. Now here I got some stun bombs, but I never actually ended up trying those or using those. But I figured I'd craft them. I thought maybe I'd try them on the boss. So I can't say if those are any good for bosses. I like to make sure I have everything prepped and crafted and shit like that, so I go into some of the menus several times. So now I have 28 currency here for this little bullshit. So I buy the revolver is great. It's like a magnum. It's like a pistol that does much more damage. It's almost like a long gun. It does a lot of damage. So, you know, getting that is really good. Some of the other stuff is not going to be as useful. I got some semi-auto pistol because it's good to have, you know, ammo for the pistol. I also load my weapons before I start a run as well, just to make sure everything's loaded. Because the last thing I want to do is try to take a shot at somebody and then I got to load my gun, which I always hate. So there's another capture. See, I did check out this route and I saw that there was 2 captures on this route. So I go for capture. Now, anything that has invisible enemies you want to look out for, as I mentioned before. So if you get a capture with an invisible enemy mod, then that may not be great. Because invisible enemies can definitely wipe you out. Sometimes I will use a Molotov or a pipe bomb to take out a group of enemies because it's faster and it can be efficient. But I try to save them. I try not to use them on the regular enemy encounters, you know. I'd rather have a bunch of explosives for the boss fight. But I may use one occasionally. Of course, if it's an emergency, I've gotten used to using some of my more powerful weapons and bombs and stuff because, you know, if you die, you lose the run. So sometimes it's better just to survive. There are times when it gets fucking crazy with the hunted mode or when you get swarmed. So now this is another capture, so I'm probably going to wipe everybody out pretty quickly. I think I was able to stealth the first person, but they're all grouped so closely together that, you know, I wasn't able to get a headshot here, so I think I sneak up and stealth kill another person by doing the triangle, which is a grab from behind. And then I think I try to go for some headshots. Let's see. Yeah, I got a headshot there. And the second one I missed the headshot. I think I got the headshot on the third shot, but I wasted some bullets. But see, now I've wiped out most of the enemies by this point, and I have an assistant. Sometimes you get an AI assistant, which is great because, say the AI assistant shoots somebody, you can run up and finish him with melee like I did here. So you can take advantage of the stun that your partner gets by shooting at the enemies as well. Now, I've mentioned already, but a lot of times what I would do is shoot somebody once just to stun them, and then I'll run up and finish them with melees. It's a good way to save bullets if you're already spotted. So I may not do that here, but it is a common strat that I use. You can also take time to heal if need be. Well, not much is going on, but you got to use listen mode. You got to be aware of your enemies because they will finish you off while you're trying to heal yourself if you're not good at doing that. But see, we've wiped everybody out now, and I didn't get to safe in time though. See, I was a little bit too slow. You do got to be pretty fast. So that was kind of a fuck up there, you know. But I ended up with enough resources, luckily, in the end. But it is nice to get those safes. They give you all kinds of different resources and shit that are useful to upgrade shit and, you know, ammo and stuff like that. All kinds of shit. But see, the captures have been good because it's been easy fucking kills, you know, to get through this mode. So they're relatively easy. They're over fast. You know, you don't have to deal with 3 waves of enemies. It's really just 1 wave of enemies. So capture really is my preferred, though capture can wipe me out sometimes, though. Sometimes you get an arrangement of enemies in a tough location that you can get swarmed and killed easily. So it kind of depends. Capture may be harder for some players. Just depends what you're good with. But remember, if you do play the capture mission, you only have to kill maybe 6 or 7 enemies at most, and you can take your time. I mean, if the timer runs out, there's no penalty except for missing the safe. Which, you want to get the safe if you can, but it's not that big of a deal. And it's an easy mission just to beat. If you're just looking for easy maps to complete, it's an easy one to do. So, I mean, I would still recommend capture because you can kind of take your time. Though the enemies may stay closely packed together, right? So you might have to deal with that. So here I'm going through some of my supplement upgrades that I can do for the character. I got some recipes. I tend to go for the more offensive shit, like I said, or the endure, which lets you take an extra hit before you die. So shit like that is what I'm probably going to go for. Some of the recipes are good to get, but the most important one, recipe-wise for me, was shivs. But I don't think she gets shivs as one of the recipes in this trading post. So, as far as shivs go, I think you may have to get them another way, if I remember right. That's one disadvantage, I think, to her, is that she may not have shivs. I did get a submachine gun, though, which is not great. It is silenced, though. It's probably a good stealth weapon, but it didn't end up doing me a hell of a lot of good on the boss fight, which is where I used it mainly. So, but it is another weapon, you know what I mean? And that's what I said is, you want to get more weapons because you're going to run out of ammo on all your weapons probably in the boss fight. So if you have another weapon with a few shots in it, at least you can get the boss health down a little bit more, take out some of the minions. So that's kind of what my strat is. I'm trying to amass a decent arsenal for the boss fight. And I try to kind of minimize, my ammo use somewhat. I'm not super worried about using pistol ammo, but I try to really minimize using like the long guns and stuff. I really try to save that shit. Luckily, you do pick up a decent amount of like pistol ammo and shit like that while you kill people. So now the only available mission, sometimes the paper will be broken or whatever, ripped up, so you won't be able to, to go do those, but the only one available now is Assault, but I kind of planned out this path already, so I was just double checking. So now this is the last mission I have to do before the boss fight. And you can see it didn't take too long because of those capture missions, so it went by pretty fast. Though I think I've gotten to the boss in 30 minutes before, when I was playing more aggressively. Especially with Abby, you can just beat the shit out of people, which is cool. And she gets health back for like just beating people up bare-fisted and shit. So, pretty cool. I do really like that character the best for this mode, but I still haven't really experimented with the other characters, so that may change. But I do like the idea of getting health back just by beating the shit out of enemies. It's a great way to keep your health up. Now, with Ellie, you can't do that unless you get one of the upgrades or something, if you find a recipe maybe. But what you can do is you can pick up candy bars and shit with auto pickup as you're running past counters and shit, and you'll get some health back that way. So with this, all the enemies are going to rush me because it's infected, so it means they're all going to swarm your location pretty much. So this is kind of a hard arrangement. And this came really close. So you basically got to take out all these rushing enemies. I can use melee on some of the smaller enemies, like these little humans, but it gets dangerous because if a clicker is in the mix, you don't really want to do that because while you're fighting with the smaller enemy, the clicker will one-hit kill you, and that'll be the end of the run. So you gotta be aware of what's going on. Now, if there's a clicker, you're going to hear the clicking sound, obviously, that they make. So if you hear that, don't fuck around and try to stab the enemies and stuff. Just try to shoot everything. Because then you're taking a big chance. Unless you have a shiv or something. But I don't know if I was able to get shivs with this character. With the shiv, at least if a clicker grabs you, you can stab it with a shiv and get out of it. But if you don't have those, you got to be very careful. I've lost a lot of runs because of the clickers. Try to get your distance and just take shots and try to wipe everybody out. If shit's moving really fast, don't worry too much about getting headshots. Now, the reason I was able to take those guys out so fast, I was using my revolver, which is like the Magnum. It can one-shot kill a lot of enemies. So it's a very good weapon, but I usually try not to use it, but I was pretty desperate here. So I started using all my good weapons and shit just to survive. See, I'm using Molotovs. And I really got to take, because I got 2 clickers rushing me, which is really dangerous. So I kind of just had to start using good shit. That's why I say, if it's an emergency, use some good shit to survive. Ammo's getting low, and getting pretty low, and I still have like one more wave after this. Now, whenever there's one enemy remaining, you can run around the whole map and grab shit if you want. You can farm items that way. Whenever you're down to the last enemy of a wave, because it'll show an arrow to where the last enemy is as well, and you can just run around and avoid the last enemy and just grab shit. I do that every once in a while, but I already grabbed a decent amount of shit in this stage, I think, so I wasn't too concerned. Because as I'm running away, I'm running around to the counters and stuff where items are, so that I can grab some shit. I do that actively while I'm fighting, so I'm usually pretty well stocked. So I think I use another Molotov here because I'm on the last wave and, ammo is not great, and I want to try to group them, but I didn't get a good grouping. But I did get the clicker on fire, at least. I may use another one here. Yeah, and that was a better one. So that weakened the enemies pretty decently. I didn't want to use all that shit, but it was getting a little desperate. So if you're in the middle of a fight and you can break away, then get the fuck out of there, because the clicker was about to one-shot me. There was 2 clickers coming on me, about to one-shot me. So you want to move fast. Now there I went prone when I didn't want to. I think I held down the wrong fucking button, which was not good. So, I barely survived this, but I did get through it. Watch out when you take down those fat fuckers. They will explode, and that will do damage to you. No, I think I might have got the dead drop here. I deposited some stuff. It's also good if you don't have shit ready for the dead drop. It's good to craft shit and then drop it in. I like using the dead drop, so you might get rid of some good items, but for me it's worth trying to get the long guns and shit. But sometimes you get recipes that you're not going to use, so you do get bullshit sometimes that's not that useful for your run. It may be, depending on your playstyle, if you like using stun bombs and stuff. I haven't really incorporated that yet. Maybe when I try the harder modes I will. But here I got a shotgun, which was a nice pickup for the final boss fight. So that should be helpful. Now normally I tried being really aggressive on the final boss, and a lot of times that ended up me getting instantly killed pretty much because I blew myself up with tripwires. Now luckily she doesn't have tripwires, so I wasn't able to blow myself up like that, at least. Whenever I have tripwire explosives, it kind of encourages me to place them down, and then I might blow myself up. So it probably worked out for the better, because I would be tempted to use those. So here I'm just getting all my ammo ready. I'm crafting everything I need, and I'm also going to use a health kit to heal myself to full health. Even if my health is a little bit lower, I would rather waste a health kit only because I'm not really going to have time to heal during the fight too much. I'm lucky if I have time to heal once during the fight. It's very hard unless you have the upgrade that lets you heal faster, where you can use health kits faster and they give back more health. That's really good. But if you don't have that, then you're going to have to heal really fucking slow. I actually lost quite a few runs because I didn't even know how to heal because I hadn't played the game in like 5 years, so I didn't know how to heal. And I kept going into the crafting menu to try to heal, which, the crafting menu is where you craft first aid kits, not use them. So that fucked me up. To use a health kit, you just press up on the D-pad and make sure that the health kit is highlighted. Then you hold down R2. But it did take me a little while before I put that together, because I wasn't really using the health kits during my runs. I was surviving with Abby just by meleeing people, so I didn't really need to use my health kits for a while. And then I'd get to the fucking boss where I needed to use my health kit, and I wouldn't know how to do it. So I failed probably at least 2 runs or something because of that, 2 or 3 runs. And I got far in those too, so that was shitty. I think I mentioned, but it took me around 16 hours, 38 minutes to finally have a successful run. And I was mostly using Abby pretty much purely. So now I'm getting everything ready. If I can get any damage upgrades, I'm going to get those. Capacity and damage pretty much is what I go for. Everything else to me is kind of negligible because I don't have problems with my aim, really. So stability, I don't really care. Fire rate is good if you're going to be firing off a shit ton of shots really fast, but most of the time I'm only taking a few shots here and there. I don't really have time to do that. So I'll usually go for capacity and damage. Recoil I don't care about. Reload speed could be good for like a shotgun or something, but I don't think this shotgun has a reload upgrade. The one on Abby's shotgun does. So there's a lot of little differences like that. If you try different characters, they have different weapons that they get. And they also have different upgrade trees and stuff. So they also have different base stats, and they start with different stuff too. So there's a lot of little differences. It's worth experimenting, trying different characters. I may have more information on that when I try the harder modes, but I mainly just, was using Abby pretty much purely because of the melee. Getting health back on melee was fucking awesome. But I was a little bit too obsessed with that. I probably should have tried Ellie sooner. I did try her very briefly, but when I say try, I mean actually give it a good try and do some runs. I think I only tried her once or twice. So I'm making sure everything is loaded up, and I'm also deciding what I'm going to start with when the fight starts. I'm immediately going to have a Molotov ready. So I was just prepping everything. So yeah, this is the boss of the first run that you complete, but after that you'll unlock the next boss. So that's how that works. You're always going to get the arcade bloater boss until you beat it. So right at the start here, I unleashed my Molotov. Now, if I had multiple Molotovs, I probably would have unloaded them all. Because this is weak to fire, this thing, I believe. It doesn't do huge damage, but, it's not bad. I almost have the boss down to like half health already. Maybe I got a quarter of its health off with that initial few shotgun blasts and a Molotov to start things out. But after that, I'm playing it very careful because this boss's one shot killed me a bunch of times. So the thing is, when this boss charges, just dodge off to the side and it'll charge into a wall and get stuck briefly, and then you can take a few shots at it. So just be ready to counter that. Let it charge you, dodge off to the side, and then counter it. That's one way to deal with it. But while you're doing that, you're going to have minions running at you and stuff. Try to take shots from a distance too. It will shoot acid at you, but it's not too damaging. But try to take some distance shots and try to have things between it, so that it can't get to you directly. And be sure to take out these infected when you have a chance, because they will grab you and that will fuck you up, and then the boss will just rush you and kill you in one hit. So you do not want to get hit by the boss's charge. It can one hit kill you. So it is very dangerous. Here I'm taking some submachine gun shots, which did a little bit of damage. Not much. It wasn't super useful. I mean, it's a silenced weapon. It's not really meant to output a lot of damage. But, when you don't have a lot of ammo, every little weapon that you could take a shot with will help. I think I ended up finishing off the boss with a fucking pistol, so it all adds up. Or if I didn't finish it off with the pistol, I did get a lot of pistol rounds in on it, but I'm running around just trying to survive. My health is really low now, so I'm trying to get the shots I can and try not to get grabbed by one of the minions. So that was my strat. It's just playing it safe. I don't have any holsters, so for me, swapping weapons takes a little bit too fucking long. So I need a lot of space if I want to swap my weapons out. I need quite a bit of space to do it. I can't swap weapons if an enemy's like right on my fucking ass. So here I was able to finish him off with the rifle, it looks like. But now I have a few more scragglers. So I'll take my time with that. Now I can take my time with this last enemy, which is no problem. I have some ammo, so I'm able to... I think I even had enough time to heal just to be extra safe. I decided to heal because I didn't want to fuck it up again at the very end. I'm stupid, If it spits acid on me, I could die, and then that's it. So now I take my time and just finish it off. And that's it. So the best strategy for me on this boss was to start off aggressive with with my explosives and shotgun, and then just run around and try to clear out the minions and just take pot shots at the boss whenever possible, and also counter its dodge. When it charges you, charge is what I mean. Counter its charge. So when it charges at you, just dodge off to one of the sides, and then shoot it in the back a bunch of times and just run away. And keep, maintain that distance. Never get close to that thing. You got to be very careful getting close to it because it can kill you in one hit. So that's my best advice, is just playing it really careful And also try to amass as much ammo and long guns and shit like that you can for that fight. That way you have a good chance, you know. Problem is you'll have to switch weapons a lot. And if you don't have the holsters, it's a pain in the ass, but you don't need the holsters. I don't like wasting money on the holsters. But just be aware you're going to be switching weapons really fucking slow if you don't have holsters. So you got to give yourself a little room to do that. And that's about it. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.